Okay, so for this next group, we're going to be working from chapter 5, where the chapter is designing with darts. So in this group, we're going to learn about how to make tucks, how to make pleats, how to add flare, how to do gathers. We'll also be talking about dealing with multiple darts, shaped darts, and radiating darts. So we'll be working from chapter 5 here. And the first thing that you want to understand about darts is dart is just an excess that we want to deal with in some way. It can be, in this example, added flare. This example is a gathered tie. Here we have, this is an example of a tuck. We can have pleats. A tuck is can be not stitched, just sewn into the seam. Can be partially stitched down. So these are all different variations that we'll be dealing with. Gathering, we'll be talking about gathering into the center front. We'll be talking about radiating darts from a shoulder area or from the neckline. So we'll be doing parallel darts. So we're mostly working from chapter 5 in this group. The first thing I want to talk about when dealing with darts and changing them to a tuck or a pleat is that a dart and as a pleat is a style line. So this is an inverted pleat where we're taking a dart excess and you can fold it any way. We can split our dart in half and we can fold half of it towards the sides, each side, halfway in. That would be an inverted pleat, sometimes known as partial box pleat, because you're creating a box inside that dart. Then you can have the entire dart uptake just to one side, and then that's sewed into the side seam. That's what creates a pleat there, always backing off the apex. It's also, here's your center front. It also, the dart could be folded toward the center front. It's a style line. So as far as rules are concerned, it becomes, what do you want your design to look like? So the first example that we're going to be doing is turning the dart into a pleat at the waist. So when it's all said and done, since we're drawing the center front on the fold, your pattern piece in your notebook will look like this. The folded piece will be unfolded. You'll have the notches down where your darts were, as these are now your tuck. You can kind of see what that would look like there. You'll have it properly labeled. You'll have your notch for your armhole. So this is what your final piece in your notebook will look like. And now I'm going to show you how you would draft this. This is your demo 301. It's chapter 5, designing with darts. We're taking a pleat at the waist. The rules are going to be the same. We're going to establish our grain line. We're going to mark our placement. In this case, it's at the waist. You won't need the dart for the bodice. You will trace everything off. You'll notch. You'll square and true. You'll add your seam allowance and your labels. So I'm going to go through that process with you now. But this is basically pretty easy flow from what we've been doing. So, chapter 5, designing with darts. We're taking the pleat at the waist. Demo 301. So first rule of thumb, as always, establish our grain line. Hook our bodice onto the grain. In this case, we're simply using the waist dart instead of a dart as a pleat. So we're going to trace everything off, add our seam allowances. It won't need the dart apex because it's not a dart, it's going to be a pleat instead. And we'll add our seam allowances. So I'm going to trace off my neckline, my shoulder line, my armhole, including my armhole notch, my side seam, my waist, my I'm going to keep this same excess, these notches at the waist, and use that instead as my pleat. So now, remember this is I'm going to cut this on the fold, so center front. On the fold. Add my grain. Now I'm going to go ahead and add all my seam allowance. First, blend and true, blend and true, blend and true, all corners. Remember, side seams, hems, perpendicular to the side seam, center front, hems, perpendicular to the center front. This is now, I'm just going to keep this excess down here because it's going to become my pleat. I'll add, remember, we talked about the seam allowance rules. 1/4 inch on the neck in your half scale becomes an 1/8. 1/2 inch shoulder becomes 1/4 inch in your half scale. 1/2 inch armhole, 1/2 inch side seam, and we're going to add this 1 inch hem. The center front's cut on the fold. So when you make your piece, your paper should be folded so that that becomes the straight of grain. I'm going to add my seam allowance. I'll do my dotted line around my neckline to get a nice curve. Half inch. On the armhole, making sure that that first section that intersects with the shoulder line is perpendicular. Dotted line around the curve. That armhole notch, remember, I will be transferring to the seam allowance. Perpendicular to the side seam. 1/2 inch on my side seam. Extend my center front 1 inch for its hem. Perpendicular to the center front. Around that curve, dashed line. Perpendicular to the side seam at the hem. And then around that shaped, what's going to be our pleat. Now I'll come in with my French tools. I think my French tools is this one. My curve tools to connect those dots nice and smoothly. Nice armhole. Something to note about the curve tools, there's not a perfect tool. You're going to have to slide them around to get the right shape. So a pattern drafter is constantly sliding their tools around very fluidly in order to achieve the shape that they want. Clean up your smudge lines. What do we have next? After we clean it up, We're going to add our notches. We're going to add our label. So, right away, notches. What do I have to do? I need to transfer my armhole dart. Our armhole notch. So that's going off this body pattern into the armhole. I need to notate my dart legs. So these are now where my pleat is going to be. Then I have my side seam. Then I have my hem. Then I have my side seam, my armhole, and my neckline. Clean up your bottom hem now that that pleat went away. Now that the pleat was cleaned up off of the pattern line. Then we're going to label, right? Name, piece, how many, your season, size. Name, piece, front bodice with waist dart, waist pleat. Cut one on fold. Season, year, size. So this base, all we did was convert the dart, no dart apex needed, to a pleat. I'm going to just cut this out so you guys can see what that looks like. When this is pleated, it's like staking the dart in the fabric, and it's basically going to be like that. Pressed a dart into a pleat. No dart, not sewn, just pressed, sewn into the waist. So that was 301.